Good morning, good day, good evening, Viners. It is December 31st, and this is the update for this week. And just so you know, reminder, we'll be in Susheen here next week. A handful of Viners will be here with us, sitting. So I will not be available to do the update next week. But probably later on in the next week, we'll get to something. I'm also, by the way, have got a whole queue of reflections from the courses to work through, and I'm going to do my best to get through all of those this week before the session starts. So the year winds down, and of course we're engaged in reflection. Just got an email from somebody in Viner saying that wishing the vine was better, and me too. Of course. At the same time, of course, appreciating the virtues of the vine as it is, and there's considerable. I think considerable discussion of issues and sharing that doesn't happen all that often, even in in-person Dharma groups, and also seeing from my perspective how people are steadily walking and doing this work continues to be inspiring, encouraging, and justifying putting the effort in to the vine, definitely. So I do encourage you, though, to consider what it would be for you to make not only your practice clearer and stronger, more loving this coming year, but also how is it that you could make the vine a stronger community. So not practicing just for yourself, of course, alone, but practicing for the vine community and, of course, all living beings. How can you do it? And concretely, I return to the expectation for vine participation. Basically, I think we just have one, is that you show up and contribute at least one thing each week. And there's a small group, some portion, I haven't counted, but a portion of people, more like daily, which is good, or maybe hourly. and mostly we've just allowed that to go. Some people we don't see much of for big periods of time. Usually, people let me know what's going on with them, and I understand. But still, I come back to that expectation and encourage you to follow through with that expectation. And occasionally, and I think I'm moving into that mode now, and will be especially in January, having a conversation with folks about whether this is the right place. No blame, no foul, but there's also following through. So, but let's see. At the end of the new year, and that's largely just because this last email, 90% of the time, for myself at least, I'm mostly feeling quite positive about the vine and what we're doing. And also really like that our place here in Nebraska, which is one of the reasons we moved here, was to facilitate sesshin practice, especially among Viners, and that's really been happening. And that's a really strong positive for me for the last couple of years, really, in my life. So I encourage you to consider what your intention is for your practice for this coming year. We had a session yesterday here in Omaha. We're not going to post the tape. It was mostly discussion and some kinds of personal sharing that just is connected with people's names and stuff that I just don't think it is fitting to post, but online, the SoundCloud thing. So we're not going to post that talk, but the one point that I made is that I'd seen somewhere, New York Times or whatever, an article about intentions and New Year's resolutions, and how, they're famously, most people don't, most of us, most of the time, don't follow through with our New Year's resolutions. 30-some% of the time, research said, do people actually follow through? Of course, it's good to have a realistic aspiration. And to work your edges, I always say. And then there's this other thing that people that didn't make a resolution in this study, it's like only 4% made the change in their life that they wanted to see. So that clear intention, there is a power to clear intention. So I encourage you for this New Year's to consider specifically what this year will be about for you and your practice. So I have this case. It's called I think it fits. It's case 40 in this record of empty hall. I'm working through it the second time, by the way, and hopefully we'll get that. Have a manuscript draft done of this by mid-February is what it's looking like now. It's called Xishuang's Little Problem. The titles are mine, so Xishuang didn't have any titles. Xishuang, there was a couple of Xishuangs. We don't, and I can't find any other translation of this case, so I don't know which one it was. There's one early in Soto, what became the Soto line, and there's also a later Lin Chi Zai Xishuang. So somebody named Xishuang. A monk was about to leave, and Xishuang asked, "Going by boat or going by land?" The monk said, "If encountering a boat, then by boat. If encountering land, then by land." Shuang said, "In between, you'll have a little problem." The monk had no words. On behalf of others, Shutong said, "Hurried and destitute, don't forget to pay the bill." So I think there's a lot for the new year, Step up and receive the unfolding karma of your life as it is. Even when hurried and destitute, step up and pay the bill. And then there's this quirky thing about, how you're going to go. You're going to take a boat, you're going to walk, Uber, taxi, get a ride your bike. And the monk is very, fundamental perspective. If a boat appears, I will take a boat. If the land appears, then I will go by land. It's like in between, when things are not so clear cut, when it's not water, it's not land, it's in that in between zone. And so much of our life is there in this in between, where we can't necessarily go by the rule. So we have to go by the principle, by the inner pattern of the way. And so coming from and living our life from that inner pattern of the way, vital, and to go deeply into our practice, to really let go of ourselves so that we can come from that inner pattern of the way. Well, that's the work. And it's no small thing, easy to get distracted. Yesterday, a couple of people in our group here were like, "Yeah, well, maybe we should be doing more stuff, prison work, mindfulness stuff with kids or whatever." Well, and maybe it's great if, somebody's vision is for that. But for Tetsugan and I, what we really are focused on is this, this in between where you have a little problem. So to clarify our heart deeply, and maybe just a few people, and however long we're here, maybe just a few people, maybe none, will be able to clarify heart and mind so clearly that they'll be able to move into the world and help others clarify the mind that deeply. That's our focus. And fortunately, there are activities of trying to ameliorate the many kinds of suffering in the human world. And the Zen practice, at least the Zen practice that I'm interested in and inspired by, energized by, is cutting through to the root, dealing with the root of human suffering. And in that, making the place open, of course, to anybody who is interested in dealing with that root. And there's not so much time. So if we spend a lot of time doing something else in order to kind of track people into this other thing, I just think for one thing, it's kind of deceptive, and it's just, if you want to, back in the old days when I was a learning disabilities teacher, there was this philosophy of working with learning disabled kids where you started out by having them bounce balls, and then they did a lot of motor coordination stuff. But what we found is that if you want to teach people to read, you teach them how to read, not bounce balls. So it might seem obvious, but it wasn't so much at the time. The same thing with this work. So cutting through the root and staying focused. That's my practice. So how about you? What is your focus for the coming year? Happy New Year, and thank you for your practice.